Hello everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you very much for coming here and watching my second video. If you haven't already, you can check out my first video on purpose. Today I'm going to be talking about the feeling of not being good enough. And as I mentioned previously in my first video, I write blogs on the things that I also talk about on my channel. So you can check that out on www.damilolasworld.co.uk, and it's titled I Am Enough. Today, I'm going to be talking about the feeling of not being good enough. I feel like this is a topic that's very close to my heart, and I also feel like everyone can sort of relate on some level on that feeling of not being good enough. And I think it's something that's really hindered me in so many different ways, in things that I couldn't even imagine it would affect. And that's gone from friendship to relationships to even small decisions like opportunities, and sort of talking myself out of situations that were for me when I look back now, or because I didn't feel like I was good enough. And today I'm going to briefly sort of talk about the things that I've done to overcome it. I think it's still something that I struggle with on a daily, not on a daily basis, but every now and again. But I think I'm better at coping with it now, and I think I want to share that with everybody or anyone that can sort of relate with it on some level. The first thing that I do whenever I get the feeling of not being good enough, I think the first thing what's the healing, I think, started from the moment I started writing. I think it's important for you to revisit where it started from, because I think throughout our childhood, I'm sure, some people it started for them at different level. And I think it's important for you to go back and recognize where it started and think of what triggered it, how did it begin. So it could be a friend, it could be your family, or it could be just people in general, or the event that happened to you, or a death could have triggered those feelings. Just sort of recognizing it and accepting it for what it is, feeling how you feel and accepting it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's okay to feel that way. It's just accepting it for what it is. And I think that's one thing I did. I started writing it down, so documenting how I was feeling and where it started, and revisiting the memories. And it's not always nice, and sometimes you can't even do it alone. I think it's not something that I would say everybody can deal with by themselves, again depending on the level of the intensity of how you're feeling. You might need a therapist, you might need a counselor, but I think it's something you should do just for you to, it's a practicing, and it's a process. So what I did was I started writing down how I felt, and from then on I started to recognize where these feelings were from. Because one thing I would say is, when you have feelings like that, it develops in your mind. It's like a schema. So it's like stored information in your head which isn't true about you. It's almost like it stops you from doing the things you've been called to do, or the things you want to do, and sort of rewriting the script. So for me, whenever I have that feeling, I say, if it's like, oh damn you can't do this, I say to myself, no, yeah, you can. You tell yourself no. Wherever that voice is coming from, wherever it's been developed, you tell yourself no, I can do it. And from then on, you start to heal, and you start to sort of progress. I mean, it's not something that happens in a day, in a week, in a month. It's a process. It could take a lifetime. And I think you shouldn't really strive for perfection. I think perfection is not realistic. It's just for you to progress. I think that's important. Another thing that I did was removing people. I think it's so important to remove things and people that remind you of how you're not good enough, or tell you that you're not good enough. Whether that's friends, even family members, if you can, avoid them. If you can, because I know some people live with family members that may have caused it, or so of course you can't avoid them if you depend on them on some level. So I think it's important. If it's friends are easier to remove, or things or memories, whatever reminds you of that feeling. I think it's important to take it away, remove yourself from it. And it's okay to remove people. Like, I think anything that costs you your joy and happiness or peace isn't meant to be in your life. Another thing that I always remind myself as well whenever I'm in that state of mind is, it's a cycle. I think we sometimes believe that whenever we have negative feelings or negative thoughts, we think this is how it's going to be forever. It's not. There's a cycle to life. You know, the more you practice these things, you move through it. So, you know, nothing lasts forever. When I say nothing lasts forever, I'm saying that how you're feeling never lasts. There would always be a moment of triumph. You know, whenever there's a rainy day, there will always be a sunny day after. Do you see what I mean? So it's just recognizing that some things are temporary. You will move on from it. Because when I look back at some of the things I used to feel like, oh my gosh, like you know, you can't do this, you can't. Even modeling, you know, I model now and I've been doing it for 2 years, and I can't believe the progress that I've made. You know, when I look back at those moments, I don't think I would be here. I don't even think I would have been doing a YouTube channel or doing it, or even have a website. You know, so I think it's important to know that these feelings change, and with progression and self improvement, you start to realize your potential and who you've been called to be. And the last thing that I there's so much more things, but the last thing I would say, which is very, 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 very important, especially if you are a believer, is praying. I think it's so important to pray, and I think praying, like I said, it's not, for me, it's not only just praying to a God, because some people I know don't believe in God. It's important to read your affirmations to yourself, you know, like writing the things that you are down, the positive things that you are, writing it down and saying it to yourself, whether it's looking in the mirror and standing in front of the mirror and literally saying it to yourself until you believe it. First of all, it's going to be awkward because it's weird, like I'm talking to myself and it's like, what? But I think the more you practice, the better it is. I don't leave my house without looking at myself and saying, girl, like you're pretty, you know, you're a beautiful person, you're strong, you're more than capable, you know, all these things. Just saying it to yourself, and the more you say it to yourself, the better it would, like it starts to connect to you. Your mind will start to sort of associate you. It will all just start to click in your head, like, okay, maybe I am good enough, maybe I am beautiful, and you start to attract things like that. And going back to my point about praying, if you are someone who believes in God, I would say definitely pray. Praying is very important, and praying and asking that God shows you who praying that God reveal who He thinks you are, not what people think you are. And I think it's a prayer that I've been doing for a few years now, just sort of asking God, show me who you think, what you see me as, you know. And it's important to also read the Bible and know what God has said about you, rather than sort of trying to find out. Because when you try to put matters into your hands, that's when you start to numb things, like drinking or smoking or going out, or, you know, chasing things that aren't important, because you're trying to find happiness in those things. But you need to find the truth about who you are first of all. And for me, you can find that from the Bible, find that from God. So I think it's important for you to pray and ask for the things that you want, and from that you start to make the progression that you need. And I think I don't want anyone to watch this and think, oh, okay, well, if I do this, I'm gonna be good, or if I do this, that's it. No, because it's a process. You have to remind yourself that each day it is a process. You know, however you feel, whatever you feel like won't last forever, it would not. Because I'm telling you now, there's so many times that I've looked back at the way I was feeling at a certain point, and I'm laughing like what was I thinking? Like, so that's all I'm gonna say for today's. But if you do want to if you do want to read on what I've said about not being good enough, I think it's a lot more descriptive in my writing. Do check out my website, www.damilolasworld.co.uk. But thank you so much for watching my video, and God bless. Hello, welcome back to my channel. This is my second channel. You know those what do they call them?
Yeah, alright. Hello, welcome back to my channel.
Oh God, please give me strength.
Alright, ready?
Alright.
Go.
Hello, welcome to my channel.